takes precedence and all things partake of its nature to a higher or lower degree. Goodness is sought by all. It is the prime cause of causes. Goodness is self-diffused and hence exists in all things, for nothing can produce that which it does not have in itself. The table demonstrates that all is in God and God is in all. That all is in all and each is in each. In the intellectual world are invisible spiritual counterparts of the creatures which inhabit the elemental world. Therefore, the lowest exhibits the highest, the corporeal declares the intellectual, and the invisible eye, made manifest by its works. For this reason the Egyptians made images of substances existing in the inferior sensible world to serve as visible exemplars of superior and invisible powers. To the corruptible images they assign the virtues of the incorruptible divinities, thus demonstrating arcanely that this world is but the shadow of God, the outward picture of the paradise within. All that is in the invisible archetypal sphere is revealed in the sensible corporeal world by the light of nature. The archetypal and creative mind, first through its paternal foundation and afterwards through secondary gods called intelligences, poured out the whole infinity of its powers by continuous exchange from highest to lowest. In their phallic symbolism the Egyptians used the sperm to represent the spiritual spheres, because each contains all that comes forth from it. The Chaldeans and Egyptians also held that everything which is a result dwells in the cause of itself and turns to that cause as the lotus to the sun. Accordingly, the Supreme Intellect, through its paternal foundation, first created light, the angelic world. Out of that light were then created the invisible hierarchies of beings which some called the stars. And out of the stars the four elements and the sensible world were formed. Thus all are in all, after their respective kinds. All visible bodies or elements are in the invisible stars or spiritual elements, and the stars are likewise in those bodies. The stars are in the angels and the angels in the stars. The angels are in God and God is in all. Therefore, all are divinely in the divine, angelically in the angels, and corporeally in the corporeal world, and vice versa. Just as a seed is the tree folded up, so the world is God unfolded. Proclus says every property of divinity permeates all creation and gives itself to all inferior creatures. One of the manifestations of the Supreme Mind is the power of reproduction according to species which it confers upon every creature of which it is the divine part. Thus souls, heavens, elements, animals, plants, and stones generate themselves each according to its pattern, but all are dependent upon the one fertilizing principle existing in the Supreme Mind. The fecundative power, though of itself a unit, manifests differently through the various substances, for in the mineral it contributes to material existence, in the plant it manifests as vitality, and in the animal as sensibility. It imparts motion to the heavenly bodies, thought to the souls of men, intellectuality to the angels, and superessentiality to God. Thus it is seen that all forms are of one substance and all life of one force, and these are coexistent in the nature of the Supreme One. This doctrine was first expounded by Plato. His disciple, Aristotle, set it forth in these words: we say that this sensible world is an image of another. Therefore, since this world is vivid or alive, how much more, then, that other must live. Yonder, therefore, above the stellar virtues, stand other heavens to be attained, like the heavens of this world. Beyond them, because they are of a higher kind, brighter and vaster. Nor are they distant from each other like this one, for they are incorporeal. Yonder, too, exists an earth, not of inanimate matter, but vivid with animal life and all natural terrestrial phenomena like this one, but of other kinds and perfections. There are plants, also, and gardens, and flowing water. There are aquatic animals but of nobler species. Yonder is air and life appropriate to it, all immortal. And although the life there is analogous to ours, yet it is nobler, seeing that it is intellectual, perpetual and unalterable. For if anyone should object and ask, how in the world above do the plants, etc. above mentioned find footing, we should answer that they do not have objective existence, for they were produced by the primal author in an absolute condition and without exteriorization. They are, therefore, in the same case as intellect and soul. they suffer no defects such as waste and corruption, since the beings yonder are full of energy, strength and joy, as living in a life sublime and being the issue of one fountain of one quality, compounded of all like sweet savours, delicate perfumes, harmonious colour and sound, and other perfections. Nor do they move violently about nor intermix nor corrupt each other, but each perfectly preserves its own essential character. And they are simple and do not multiply as corporeal beings do. In the midst of the table is a great covered throne with a seated female figure representing Isis, but here called the pt46. G. R. S. Mead defines the IYNX as a transmitting intelligence. Others have declared it to be a symbol of universal being. Over the head of the goddess the throne is surmounted by a triple crown, and beneath her feet is the house of material substance. The threefold crown is here symbolic of the triune divinity, called by the Egyptians the Supreme Mind, and described in the Sefer HaZohar as being hidden and unrevealed. According to the Hebrew system of Kabbalism, the tree of the Sephiroth was divided into two parts, the upper invisible and the lower visible. The upper consisted of 3 parts and the lower of 7. The 3 uncognizable Sephiroth were called Kether, the crown, Chakma, wisdom, and Binah, understanding. These are too abstract to permit of comprehension, whereas the lower 7 spheres that came forth from them were within the grasp of human consciousness. The central panel contains 7 triads of figures. These represent the lower Sephiroth, all emanating from the concealed threefold crown over the throne. Kircher writes the throne denotes the diffusion of the triform Supreme Mind along the universal paths of the 3 worlds. Out of these 3 intangible spheres emerges the sensible universe, which Plutarch calls the House of Horns and the Egyptians, the Great Gate of the Gods. The top of the throne is in the midst of diffuse serpent-shaped flames, indicating that the Supreme Mind is filled with light and life, eternal and incorruptible, removed from all material contact. How the Supreme Mind communicated his fire to all creatures is clearly set forth in the symbolism of the table. The divine fire is communicated to lower spheres through the universal power of nature personified by the World Virgin, Isis, here denominated the IYNX, or the polymorphous all-containing universal idea. The word idea is here used in its Platonic sense. Plato believed that there are eternal forms of all possible things which exist without matter. And to these eternal and immaterial forms he gave the name of ideas. In the Platonic sense, ideas were the patterns according to which the deity fashioned the phenomenal or ectopal world. Sir W. Hamilton. Kircher describes the 21 figures in the central panel thus: 7 principal triads, corresponding to 7 superior worlds, are shown in the central section of the table. They all originate from the fiery, invisible archetype, the triple crown of the throne. The first, the Ophionic or IYNX triad, VSW, corresponds to the vital and fiery world and is the first intellectual world, called by the ancients the Etherium. Zoroaster says of it, "Oh, what rigorous rulers this world has." The second, Oribomorphous triad, OQR, corresponds to the second intellectual, or ethereal, world, and is concerned with the principle of humidity. The third, or Nepht-En triad, XYZ, corresponds to the third intellectual and ethereal world and is concerned with fecundity. These are the 3 triads of the ethereal worlds, which correspond to the Father Foundation. Then follow the 4 triads of the sensible, or material, worlds, of which the first 2 correspond to the sidereal worlds, GIKN, namely, Osiris and Isis, Sun and Moon, indicated by 2 bowls. They are followed by 2 triads, the Hecatine, LMN, and the Serap-N, corresponding to the sublunary and subterranean worlds. These complete the 7 worlds of primary genii ruling the natural universe. Psellus quotes Zoroaster. The Egyptians and the Chaldeans taught that there were 7 corporeal worlds, i.e., worlds ruled by the intellectual powers. The first is of pure fire. The second, third, and fourth, ethereal. The fifth, sixth, and 7th, material. The 7th being the one called terrestrial and hater of light, and is located under the moon, comprising within itself the matter called fundus, or foundation. These 7, plus the one invisible crown, constitute the 8 worlds. Plato writes that it is needful for the philosopher to know how the 7 circles beneath the first one are arranged according to the Egyptians. The first stride of fire denotes life,